Hey everyone, Bill Hood here with TruckingMBA and the Velocity Group. And yeah, I saw an article today in FleetOwner magazine. I actually saw it online. And the president of Roadmaster, or the CEO of Roadmaster, he was talking about how the downturn or the loss of trucking companies and the number of trucks that are out there, how this is a good thing. Calling of the herd, this is a natural thing. He was very clear to say that he's not happy that people are losing their jobs, but this is a natural progression with business. Hold on a second here. That may help us out a little bit with some of the lighting we have. And there's some interesting things as far as we take a look at here. I mean, here's some statistics here that came from Brighton Capital. So the first half of 2019, we had 650 fleets, trucking companies go out of business compared to 175 in the first half of 2018. So everyone wants to compare those numbers, those two numbers as far as what they're taking a look at. And that's all fine and good with things. But what people fail to look at is that everyone wants to look at that the rates that we got in 2018. That was an anomaly. Actually, if anything, I kind of feel that hurt our industry more than anything. And let me explain a little bit here. It's imagine you have a housekeeper or anybody who's doing some work for you, and their rates double, and you can't do anything. They're all of a sudden you just having to pay double, and it's going on and on. You're going to do something about that. You're going to take action to get things back under control, unless there's an absolute reason why. They double because you're asking for more work or to be there more or something like that. That's different. But when somebody has a load from Chicago to Atlanta that they do 3 times a week, and all of a sudden they're paying 3 times as much money for that, they're not getting any better service. In many cases, they get worse service when they're in these markets. So they're going to do something about that. And that's what hurt our industry. We've seen a big shift in how many companies have shifted to the point where they've outsourced the management of their logistics, where companies will come in and let's say they're spending $20 million a year on transportation spend. That's everybody from the, let's say, logistics manager on down, warehouse and everything else. And some large logistics company comes in and says, we'll do it for 19 million. So that company is on the hook for saying, they take over the logistics manager and all the people that are in the organization, the warehouse space, finding the capacity and handling all of that, usually bringing in some software to help optimize some things. But what happens is you've got more people at the shipper level that are really starting to take a look at the pricing and what's going on there. So that accelerated in 2018 because of what was happening in pricing. That's why I think it's hurt the industry. But the other perspective I think that is lost on people, and they talk about, is that these rates aren't sustainable out there. Well, if you were in 2015 and you got these rates today, you would be ecstatic. 16, 17, we're kind of in there. We're in pretty solid rates there. So we're looking at rates that beat every other year except 2018. Now, one of the things people talk about is how much more expensive things have gotten. When you take a look at it, I talked to a couple insurance friends of mine, and I said, listen, take a look at an average rate, 1-year company, good safety record. What would they pay a year for insurance, and what would they pay now for insurance? And take a look at that difference. That difference, depending on the markets where they're at, is anywhere from 4 to 6 cents per mile is what we're looking at. When I look at some of the data on the tractors and what we have, and if you can manage things right and use depreciation and you really run it like a business and not just say, hey, here's what everything is, we're not seeing a significant increase in what it costs to run the tractor. as far as on an ongoing basis. Um, there's probably got to be a way to turn off the ringing when I'm doing some of this stuff on my phone. Sorry about that. So everyone's talking about the markets and the rates and the things that are going on, and they're not as focused on the big picture and the long term. So the question is, and that I put out there is this a good time to get into the market? Well, if you truly are a business person, you understand the business side of things, then any time is a good time theoretically to get into a market. Just because the market's what they're saying down from 2018, that doesn't mean that if you can't put a good business plan together and show that you can make a profit, that's a bad time because last year was a better time theoretically. You look at last year. So last year was the time to get into the market. How many of those companies that got into the market last year are out of business this year? And we're not talking about those fleets that have been around a while. We're talking about those guys that did not renew their insurance after their first year. There's a ton of single truck operations like that have gone out of business. So if you have a solid business plan, you're doing the things you're supposed to be doing, that is a good time to get into the business. What the CEO of Roadmasters was saying is when you have these boom times also is you have a lot of people who come into markets, in this case the trucking market, that really aren't prepared. The barrier of entry to get in to run general freight is pretty low. It's pretty easy to get into and start your trucking company and get into that business. But that doesn't mean that you're a business person. You're a truck driver that bought a job. You're not a business person first, and trucking just happens to be one of the tasks that you do. So that's one of the concerns, and that's something that happens out there that people need to be more focused on the overall financials, not just the rate per mile, and hope they have enough cash in their checking account when the insurance payment comes due, or that they can scrounge up enough cash if they got to get a new set of tires or something like that. It needs to be run like a business first, and that's the big piece that's missing out there. So we talk a lot more about that as we see things come up. Now, there's one other thing that he mentioned in here that I disagree with this on, with people. And now in our position where we're doing compliance, I see a lot of this. He's saying that there's a driver retention issue, not a driver shortage issue. I hate it when people say this because there's the one thing that they forget to talk about: qualified. What happened in 2018 is we saw a ton of people, Progressive, I'm going to pull them out there. You can insure just about anybody under Progressive if you have enough money. And we saw a lot of people paying $30,000, $35,000 a year for a driver. Now, that is not a qualified driver. That is not somebody who's going to stay in the market long term, because what's going to happen is that company that last year was willing to pay $32,000 for that driver is not going to be able to and willing to pay that for this driver this year. And that reason the driver was $32,000 is because no other trucking company, that what they have in there, they're not qualified. They're not going to be able to get through compliance at another trucking company with traditional hiring practices out there. So that's what we're seeing. Yes, if you can raise the money, if you're willing to put more money out there, you can bring more drivers into it. But there's a lot of drivers who came in last year that just aren't qualified. They're going to be out when those companies go out. That driver's gone. That driver's out of the market because chances are nobody else is going to hire them. Now, the other thing that we're going to see is we've got January 6th right around the corner here, and the drug clearinghouse is going to be opening up. And we're going to see quite a few drivers who right now are not qualified to drive because they failed a drug test in the past. They didn't go through a program, and they leave the carrier that they failed the drug test off the next, so they fail drug tests, they go 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it needs to do in order to get cleaned up, and then they turn around and they turn around and apply for somebody else, and they go into. What's going to happen on January 6th is the medical review officer that sees that is going to be required to submit to this, the drug clearinghouse. And then the carrier is also going to be required to submit to the drug clearinghouse. Now, if you're an independent owner operator, you have to have someone like us where we're a third party administrator that has to submit on behalf of the carrier. So to making sure that it's being done. Then when you're hiring a driver, what you're doing now, you got that, we got a 3-year window here, right? That you need to check the background and ask about their drug testing. So you still need to do that. So it'll take us 3 years to bring the whole system up to date with saying everybody has been working in the system. So when you're hiring a driver, you're required to go out and try to check the system to see if they're in that system. On the driver side, what will happen is when you put the driver information, something will be pushed out to the driver where they authorize that. And then also on an annual basis, you're required as a carrier to also check the driver. Now they got 2 levels. They got hey, I'm just querying to see if the driver's in here. And then it's, okay, I want more information. So on an annual basis, you can just query. It only puts drivers into it if they failed a drug test or refused a drug test. So the drivers are going to get pushed out into that. And what we're going to see is more and more of those drivers are going to come up. So they're going to make the system very easy as a carrier to make sure that you're not bringing anybody on that is not qualified to drive. Very hard to wean those people out. I'll tell you right now, as a company who runs a drug consortium, I'm absolutely amazed at the number of people who fail their drug tests and are trying to think they can go back and they can do it again. They just, they go off and they apply for somebody else. Unless they go through an SAP program, a return to duty process, they're not qualified to drive anymore. So they're going to be knocked out. So estimates are anywhere from 150,000 to 300,000 drivers in the next 3 years are going to be pulled out of the market for that. So, hey, thank you for watching. We're going to try to, as we see more news and things pop up, do some more of this stuff. Going to be putting more detailed thoughts about what the CEO of Roadmaster had to say on a blog up here shortly, so be sure and go and check that out at velocitygroup.com, and make sure you like us and subscribe and hit that little bell button so you can get notified when we have something coming on. Thanks a lot.